Today's video is brought to you by Grey Viking Games. Click the link in the description below to buy mtg Arena codes for cosmetics, packs, and more. Hey, what's up everyone? My name is Jeff, and today we're going to dive into some Strixhaven spoilers today. We have so many cards here that came out recently, and with today being my wife's birthday, and with me being super sick today, and with a bunch of Easter stuff coming out tomorrow with family, I got this one up a little bit late. And so we're going to be diving right into this stuff. I'm actually going to just talk about the cards that are relevant and not even show any of the stuff that's not relevant. I spend way too much time talking about the cards that are irrelevant whenever I do show them. And so we're just going to be talking about the good stuff here today. And there's a ton of good stuff here today too, though. So we have so much cards to talk about. And so I'm going to dive right into it. Sorry if I'm not going to be quite as animated because I am feeling rather under the weather right now. But let's do this madness. Whitherbloom, 7 mana 4/4 with flying. At the beginning of each upkeep, create a 1/1 black and green pest creature token with when this creature dies, you gain 1 life. So every single upkeep, that's the same as, you know, it's that card again. It does it every upkeep, which is really busted. And the fact that it does extra things with these creatures as well, even better. And then you can pay 10 life to untap all lands you control. Only activate this once each turn. That means you can activate it on an opponent's turn and have the ability to to untap your lands every single turn if you want to, one time. Really busted. You of course have to have infinite life for that to really become really relevant and powerful. But if you have, you know, infinite mana or untapped mana every single turn, you might be able to just make that kind of stuff happen. There's lots of ways to be gaining life. There's lots of ways to set up, especially by turn 7 when this finally hits the battlefield, that you might be able to just kind of go off and do some crazy things with this. So I'm really excited for Whitherbloom. I think it's a very powerful card, and excited to see where it goes. I'm not sure if it's quite a standard playable card as much as Commander, but we're still going to be doing some fun stuff and fun shenanigans in Standard, as long as we have enough life gain to make it work. And then we got a crazy card. There's actually 2 different versions of the backside. Let me show that real quick. One with 3 costs and one with 4 costs that they showed. I believe that the 4 cost version is the one that's accurate, and so we're going to go off of that. So we'll go and read that side first. So the backside here first. Journey to the Oracle, 4 mana, sorcery. You may put any number of land cards from your hand onto the battlefield. Then if you control 8 or more lands, you may discard a card. If you do, return to Journey to the Oracle to its owner's hand. So any number of land cards from your hand onto the battlefield. Busted levels of ramp. So if this was at 3 mana, the biggest thing here is that I was immediately thinking of all the things you can do at the 3 mana version. At 3 mana version, what you want to do is on turn 1, turn 2, you want to draw cards, filter cards, and make sure that you are filling your hands with as much land as possible. And then on turn 3, you play Journey to the Oracle, put out 5 lands or 4 lands onto the battlefield, you know, and then you return this back to hand, so you have something in hand, which is, guess what? You go back to having Jadzi, Oracle of Akbios, whatever, this other side of it where you're trying to ramp into something really busted, and you're most of the way there by turn 3. Having this be a 4-drop, it kind of meshes a little bit with the migrations path, all those kinds of other things. I think this is a better version than those. At the same time, though, it means you have to have lands in hand and have already gotten to 4 lands on the battlefield or ways to ramp up to it. So you've already played out at least 4 cards, because, you know, lands to ramp also mean that they have to be cards to put onto the battlefield, or ways to draw cards to be able to get more lands in your hand that you can actually be playing this out. That's the thing that we find with like Azusa, with a bunch of different cards like that, is that if you're playing all of your lands from hand every time, you actually end up running out of lands eventually. How about that? And you need usually card draw or other ways to make sure that you keep hitting your lands every single turn. But I think you can very consistently, in a very land heavy deck and with ways to maybe draw cards and keep your hand full, anything like that, that Journey to the Oracle can be pretty consistently put 2 lands onto the battlefield. And then if you have 8 or more lands on the battlefield, you can bring it back. You may discard a card if you do return it back to its hand. And so I really like this card still because of Jadzi, the card we have. The part of this we haven't even talked about yet, which is crazy busted as well. All right, 8 mana 5/5 human wizard. Discard a card and return it back to its owner's hand, so it has some protection. And then you have Magecraft. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a non-land card, you may cast it by paying 1 rather than paying its mana cost. If it's a land card, put onto the battlefield. All right. If it's a non-land card, you may cast it by paying 1 rather than paying its mana cost. So this is busted. This is on the level, I believe, of Omniscience. For 8 mana. Omniscience, I think, is 10 mana to actually get up and going. With this one, it's 8 mana, and unfortunately, you don't get to do stuff right on the same turn you're doing it on. But at the same time, you might ramp up into more than 8 mana, because this is obviously going into a ramp deck. You have ramp on the other side of this card already. And I think that you're wanting to be able to cast lots of cheap spells with this. So I think this actually works really well in the same deck. So you're wanting to play ops, you're wanting to play card draw spells that are instants or sorceries, so that you can fill your hand, so that by turn 4 you can play lots of lands on turn 4. You're already wanting to do that with the other side. You want to do that same exact thing for the Magecraft side of this, where you can cast cheap instants and sorceries, card draw spells, ops, whatever, especially because opt lets you see what's on top of your library, or I guess on that one you end up drawing it. Like I would say you'd want to play Omen of the Sea in this deck as well, but at the same time, Omen of the Sea is an enchantment spell instead of instant or sorcery. But things like that effect, things that let you look at the top card of your library, will let you put something good on top, or like a Brainstorm, which is coming in Historic. Seems like this is going to be busted. Brainstorm, pay 1, the best thing on top of your deck, play an Omniscience for free. There you go, bam, boom, done. Now you have an Omniscience and you have Jazzy, and every time you cast a spell, instant sorcery, you get to pay 1 and pay more stuff off the top. This is just really, really crazy, and you get to put more lands onto the battlefield. So it's kind of a weird mix where I feel like you want to have a bunch of cheap spells, you want to have a bunch of ramp, which cultivates works for this. There's the kind of rampant growth card that kind of works, the new rampant growth card that came out recently. Actually, I'm not sure if I put that into this one. I might need to add that in here later. It's a really good card. There's a lot of really good stuff that anyway this can do, and so I could dive into what this card could do for forever. We're gonna have to make videos on this later to talk about it. I would love for Journey to the Oracle to be the 3 mana version. I believe it is the 4 mana version though. I ended up posting the 3 mana version to my community page, which, by the way, if you guys want to check out, subscribe to the channel. There's a community page. I do put stuff up there pretty often, but sometimes incorrect stuff apparently too. And so correcting that here, I believe it is the 4 mana version. Typically it's always the worst option. That's what Wizards actually gives us. All right. Blex Vexing Pest, 3 mana, 3/2 pest. Other pests, bats, insects, snakes, and spiders you control get +1/+1. Whenever it dies, you gain 4 life. We got a Lord for pests, for snakes, for spiders, bats, insects, all of the things that I am the only person that plays them. But now look who's laughing. Everyone else still. But you know what? I got it now. There's actually a Lord for all that stuff. So boom, bam, baby. Check me out. All right, this card is awesome. So Blex, I think this is just one of the best commanders. Like I probably am going to be playing commander around this, like for sure. It's going to happen because it's just so fun. And while there aren't that many great, of any one of these types of things, if you're playing a commander deck that plays good versions of each of these, because there are good snakes, there are good spiders, there are good bats, there's good of all these things. Is there a whole deck full of one of these things that's not good? Not necessarily. But the fact that we got a Lord that adds up to everything is pretty awesome. And that would be good by itself, but we also got the other side of this card that is fantastic as well. So search for Blex, 4 mana, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may put any number of them into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. But you lose 3 life for each card you put into your hand this way. And so if you have lots and lots of life, it's just 4 mana, draw 5 cards, which in Commander, you get to play that from your command zone. So this is probably going to be one of my new commanders. I'm really excited about playing this as a new commander. It's really good stuff. Anyway, so that you can play that from the command zone is really awesome. And anyway, the other side of this, like that side of it is good. I don't think that in standard you're going to be at a place where you can typically put 5 cards into your hand. At the same time, though, if you're a combo deck, if you just need one last card to kind of pull everything together, you're looking 5 deep, or you need more cards in hand, or maybe you've found ways to gain lots and lots of life, and so you can just kind of do that if you need to. Busted. At the same time, though, you're still just looking 5 deep and just picking one that you want for 4 mana. That's really powerful stuff as well. So really like this. Blex, this card just makes me really excited and happy. All right, another card that makes me really excited and happy, Retriever Phoenix, 4 mana 2/2. As we know, Phoenixes are never super busted. This is just a 2/2, so that helps a little bit. But with flying and haste, whenever it enters the battlefield, if you cast it, learn. As long as Retriever Phoenixes in your graveyard, if you would learn, you may instead return Retriever Phoenix to the battlefield. That's pretty awesome, especially because you can have a bunch of these into the battlefield at the same time. Actually, I'm not sure how this reads. As long as it is in the graveyard, if you would learn, instead return this one. I'm not sure if you could return a bunch of them all at once. I think that's the one mechanic of this that makes this either completely busted or just kind of meh. The cool thing about learn is that whenever you learn, you have the ability to go look at your sideboard. You have the ability to you have the ability to go look at your sideboard and grab a lesson card, or you have the ability to discard a card and draw a card. Well, you can now discard Retriever Phoenix and draw a card, and the next time that you learn, you can bring back Retriever Phoenix for free if you want to. That's the main idea of Retriever Phoenix, is that it adds the benefit to the downside of learn effects. There's already like the ability of having learned to discard some of your awesome big spells that you were wanting to reanimate the spells, or get the free casting the big spells. You can already do that with it, and now it just kind of adds a little bit more versatility to learn. I think that's the reason why I'm still a little bit hyped on learn, even though I'm not really sure what I feel about it. Is just because it is a versatile effect where you're getting some sort of advantage regardless of what you're doing. And the more things that are like this card that give you more things to do in those decks, more ways to make it a little bit more versatile and busted, just make it better. And so Retriever Phoenix, I think, is really cool. It would be really busted if you can bring 4 of these back for 1 learn effect. If you only bring 1 back for 1 learn effect, I think it becomes a lot weaker. And unfortunately, I think that's how it is actually reading. But yeah, let me know in the comments below, because I'm not totally sure how the ruling is on some of these things. My name's just Jeff. I don't know a lot of things. Okay, guys. All right. Sedgemoor Witch, 3 mana 3/2 with Menace, and the one thing I do know about is that this is a busted card. So 3 mana 3/2 with Menace, Ward. So if someone's going to target this, they have to pay 3 life to do it. This is kind of a what's the dragon? I can't think of this dragon's name. It's been two videos in a row, but it also says whenever someone targets it, they have to pay 3 life. This is just the ward effect instead being there instead, which is awesome. Magecraft. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, create a 1/1 black and green pest creature token with when this creature dies, you gain 1 life. So we've seen the pest thing, we've seen all that kind of stuff. Why is this card actually busted? Because it's Young Pyromancer for 1 more mana, but it has protection for itself, kind of, and it has menace, and it has higher stats. It's Young Pyromancer in black. It's good, right? So yeah, Young Pyromancer have been played for forever. Part of the reason Young Pyromancer has been played for forever is because it's in the 2-drop slot. But that doesn't mean that this wouldn't see play. Like, this is still a really powerful card, and the tokens that it makes are even better than the tokens that Young Pyromancer makes. It has better stats. It has a keyword, which is better than Young Pyromancer, and it has ward, with it has protection, which is better than Young Pyromancer. And so there's enough things that make this better than Young Pyromancer. And I'm not sure if being in black actually makes it better or not. There are more instants and sorceries that are relevant sometimes in black. At the same time, though, red typically has the ability to spell slinger, kind of go crazy with it. Anyway, I'm just still really excited about this card. I think it's really cool. I don't think this ends up having a home in the historic deck, because losing the value of Luris, which lets you cast stuff over and over again, is really cool. But I do think that this finds a home in standard, probably. I think there ends up being a pretty good deck built around this that's going to be pretty good. So, alrighty then. Pestilent Cauldron and Restorative Boon. Excuse me. 3 mana artifact. Tap to discard a card, so you can discard anything every turn if you want to, and you get to create a 1/1 black green pest creature token with when this creature dies, you can gain 1 life. Well, if you're a deck that wants to take stuff from your hand and put it into the graveyard, that becomes really, really powerful. All right, the rest of this card. Pay 1, tap it. Each opponent mills X cards, where X is the amount of life you gain this turn. If you can gain, 40, 60 life in a turn, you have to just mill them out for 1 mana. That's not easy to do, but there are ways to make infinite life gain. And some of those are easier than other ways that, than infinite damage or whatever else. There's not a ton of them, but you can also just gain a ton of life in a turn and have this for 1 mana be milling like 12. And if you can do that multiple times in a row, which I think would be a little bit difficult, but if you could, it's really busted. And then it even has the ability to kind of like take care of issues that you're milling into the opponent's graveyard. So you can also just pay 4 to tap it and exile for target cards from a graveyard and draw a card. And so pretty nice. It's almost like cling to the dust type of effect. Like you can also have a cling to dust on this by exiling, paying for and escaping, but from both graveyards, and draw a card. And so we've already seen that side of things has still been playable at times as well. So Pestilent Cauldron, just the Cauldron side of it, I think is actually rather useful, although I think it has to be built around the right deck, and it's a combo type deck. And then if that wasn't enough though, we still have the other side of this card. 5 mana, return up to 2 target creature, land, or planeswalker cards from your graveyard to your hand. Each player gains 4 life. I feel like this card is not too powerful. I don't know why they had to say each player gains 4 life instead of just you gain 4 life. I don't know what makes this, other than that the other side is busted as well, but why it has to say each player there. I don't think that matters as much because I think you're trying to combo off with the Pestilent Cauldron if you're going to be playing this. And so, but that's just a nice thing, because if you are playing Pestilent Cauldron and you already have it out in a constructed deck, I don't think you need more than one of the Pestilent Cauldrons. I think that it ends up being just kind of dead cards if you end up having too many of these. And so that's why I think the Restorative Boon is just like, it's a way to gain life, and you can keep bringing back spells that maybe gain life or something like that, as long as they're creatures, lands, or planeswalker cards. And so I think that is the reason why you play Restorative Boon, is you play it for the Pestilent Cauldron, and then Restorative Boon at least does something, and that's cool. And so I like it. Here's a busted card for you. It seems like I'm saying that over and over again. That's because I am. There's so many cool cards here. I'm really excited about 4 mana, 11/10. Yeah, that's right. 4 mana and 11/10. With a downside, but is it? All right. Whenever it attacks or blocks, you sacrifice a creature. Oh no. If only there were lots of decks that wanted to sacrifice creatures. All right, so there is an issue of, you can just end up having to sacrifice creatures, and it doesn't end up being that great. But there's lots of ways to get creatures to be able to sacrifice. What is it? There's Lovestruck Beast, which is already in like a green stompy deck that would work with this. Creates the 1/1 that, yeah, I don't want that one to die, but if it means I get a hit in for 11 points of damage, okay. Other decks that are wanting to sacrifice anyway, Woe Strider creates a goat for you to sacrifice. There's Archfiend's Vessel that you'd want to sacrifice. There's so many creatures that you end up wanting to sacrifice that it's fine. And there's also just a combo, if you can go into Jund, play this on turn 4. On turn 5, if you have the mana available to do that, you can also Unleash Fury and then Kazil's Fury on the next turn and win the game. And so turn 5 combo with still having just good stuff. Like those are cards that you can play with Goldspan Dragon, with Bone Crusher Giants, with everything else. Like, it's not hard to throw those cards into a deck and still have good value. This just becomes like an extra turn 5 combo kill. You could probably even do it faster if you have some sort of ramp. And so exciting stuff. I think it's just a fun card. It's straightforward, good. We don't need to talk about it too long, but oh boy, we're going to be playing with it in Magic a lot once it comes out. I'm excited. Callous bloodmage, 3 mana, 2/1. When it enters the battlefield, you choose one of 3 different options. We saw this kind of effect with the Selesnya card that destroys artifacts, gains life, all that kind of stuff. This is kind of the same type of effect where there's just a lot of good options. You can either create a 1/1 black and green pest creature token. You can draw a card and lose 1 life, or you can exile target player's graveyard. And so, well, I'm not sure if I quite rank this at the same level as the Selesnya card. I can't think of the card names right now. Sorry guys, I'm out of it today, so not gonna be thinking about it too hard here. But this is still just valuable. No matter what, one of these options is going to be good for you. If you need to being able to exile someone's graveyard, fantastic. In Commander, I feel like this just adds so much to you. If there is someone's graveyard that's really getting scary, if someone's playing Muldrotha or whatever, boom, bam, done. Graveyards are exiled. And you can also target yourself if you're playing something like Sir Conrad that wants to exile the graveyard to get a bunch of damage out at one time, or something crazy like that. And then you can also just draw a card, lose life. You can do that if you're playing Panharmonicon effects. It becomes really powerful as well. I'm not sure if when it enters the battlefield, you get to choose one. So I believe, yeah, Panharmonicon will let you choose one on each of the instances, I believe. Anyway, and then also just creating another creature with this is actually pretty powerful, especially because it does do something. It's not the worst thing. I think you typically would want to try to draw a card, but if you are just needing blockers, that's a pretty good blocker. It gains you life when it dies, so good stuff. All right, on to the next one. Cooling Ritual. We have a bunch of good removal in this. Like, we have so much good removal that we're going to talk about here in this one. And this kicks it off. Cooling Ritual, 4 mana, sorcery. Destroy each non-land permanent with mana value 2 or less, and you add black or green for each permanent destroyed this way. So there's a couple different ways to play this. This is kind of, we've already seen Ritual Soot be really valuable just because it destroys so many things at mana value 3 or less. This is basically that, but in 2 colors, so actually sometimes a little bit easier to cast, but also can't be in monocolored. 2 or less doesn't actually affect everything that much. Honestly, I think that that hits most of the things in standard right now anyway. And then you get the bonus of, and you add mana for each permanent destroyed this way. So first off, you can build that just for value of, okay, I destroy all this stuff and I get to play one of my cards to increase the board state here. So let's say that I killed 2 or 3 different creatures with this. Sometimes you can definitely get this up to like 4 or 5. If you're doing it, you know, on turn 4, opponent was on the play and they got a bunch of things out there. And then you can maybe cast Garruk as well, you know, or cast whatever other spell you want to be casting that's really busted with this. So really, really good, especially because Garruk, you're actually wanting your creatures to die to be able to use its ultimate at some point. So this kind of adds to that as well. And I think that's the other way to build around this, is that you can also create quite a few tokens yourself. If you're playing a bunch of pest tokens, you're playing a bunch of things like that, you play this out, all your pest tokens die, you gain a bunch of life from them, and you get to gain a mana for every single token that you had. Then, so this does work for each non-land permanent. It doesn't say non-land, non-token permanent, just non-land permanent with mana value 2 or less. So all tokens work for this. In Commander, you can end up hitting so many mana rocks first off, so many treasures that people sometimes have, so many just like whatever else, people having a bunch of tokens, snake tokens, like there's so many things out there. So this in Commander is insane. Like this is probably 4 mana gain 12. So I'm a huge fan of this card. I think in standard is playable. It's crazy powerful in other places as well. It's crazy how I forgot to put this mythic card up earlier, but honestly, I don't think it's as busted all the other ones. And that's crazy to say because this card's also busted. All right, 7 mana, Harness Infinity, instant, exchange your hand and your graveyard, and then exile Harness Infinity. So what does that mean to exchange? As far as I understand it, it means that your hand becomes your graveyard and your graveyard becomes your hand. And so however big your graveyard is, that is now your hand. That only works for the turn, and if you don't have a reliquary tower or some way to make your hand have infinite hand size, or unlimited hand size, then you are gonna have to discard a bunch of stuff and put it into the graveyard. In some cases that can actually be useful if you have effects that like are wanting things to go to the graveyard. Again, Sir Conrad, because that's the deck I'm wanting to play in Commander, and now in Standard as well with this. But you could end up like going to the end step, having a bunch of cards in hand. Oh, discard a bunch of creatures, deal 10 damage to their face. So there's combos even with doing that side of things as well. But I think the benefit of this is you can draw like a million cards with this. It's just really powerful, and it's instant speed. So that means that you can do it on their end step, and then you can untap and have mana still to do this. So I think you end up taking an entire turn to do this. But like if you're playing Commander, if you're playing whatever, you can still be holding up removal, still do that stuff, and just find the right time to make it work. And then whenever it becomes useful enough, and you probably were milling out cards, playing a bunch of different cards that will put stuff into the graveyard. This just ends up becoming a massive amount of card draw, card advantage for you. And even if you do have to discard down to hand size, you get to keep the 7 best things, and that's usually a pretty good effect on turn 7 in a game. So I'm a huge fan of this card. I think it's pretty good. I'm not sure if it is standard playable, but it is really powerful. There's so many other powerful things at 7 mana though, so I'm not sure. 2 mana, 1/3. Whenever you gain life, each opponent loses 1 life. So Dina, this is just I think the one that's been like on the face of a lot of the Whitherbloom stuff in general. So you can also pay 1 to sacrifice another creature, and then Dina gets +X+0 until end of turn, where X is the sacrifice creature's power. So sacrifice stuff, you can actually end up having that do quite a bit of damage. I like that this is just pay 1, you don't have to tap it or anything like that. So they can be a pretty powerful combat effect, especially with 11 power demon. Swing in with both of them, they sacrifice another creature, and then like whatever one they block, you get in for 11 damage on the other one. And so it can be pretty sweet stuff. So I think Dina is good, and I'm not sure how many effects you can actually have for gaining life on every turn in black green. That's typically a white effect to have that much incidental life gain. There are some cards that just like gain you life every single turn. There are a bunch of different effects that gain life over and over and over again, like Soul Warden, like whatever else. And so those effects can be pretty good. I think this kind of plays a little bit like Veto. We've seen this effect. Actually, there was like a 5 mana card that did the same type of effect, and there were people that were making that busted just by having a 5 mana version of this effect. Veto, of course, came in and made that even better. This is just another copy of Veto in decks that are trying to do that kind of thing. And I think that having another copy of Veto for that kind of effect in standard actually does make this playable. And so I think there is a deck for that. I'm not sure what that looks like, but there is a deck for it. So I'm excited for it because I'm going to do it. Auric Myth Mage, 4 mana, 3/3. Sorry, I have there's so many cards that are still so busted to talk about. We're only halfway, guys. This is such good stuff. All right, like this one that just lets you tutor a card and put it into your graveyard every single turn. All right, so tap it, search your library for a card, put it into your graveyard, then shuffle. If it's an instant or sorcery card, put a +1/+1 card on Auric Myth Mage. You get 3/3. So you don't get to put it to your hand. Oh, bummer. You only get to put it into your graveyard, where sometimes that's where you want things. So Auric Myth Mage, just 4 mana, tutor a card every single turn. You have to put into your graveyard, which it is difficult to put, consistently have stuff to put into your graveyard. This is probably something more for Commander than it is for Standard. Historic has a little bit more options to make sure that you can kind of control the what's in hand, what's in graveyard a little bit more. Anyway, this is just really powerful. It's a really good card. It is definitely more of just I think this is an ultimate staple now for any black deck that's going to have ways to get stuff back from the graveyard anyway. In Commander, this is one of those tutors that everyone hates. If you one of those kinds of people that doesn't like infinite combos, because this will go get infinite combos for days. I like it. All right, the bibliopex plex. Land, not a legendary land for some reason. You can tap and add colorless mana, and you can pay 2 to tap it. Look at the top card of your library. If it's an instant or sorcery card, you may reveal it and put it into your hand. If you don't put the card into your hand, you may put it into your graveyard. So pretty powerful stuff. But the caveat, activate only if you have exactly 0 or 7 cards in hand. And so you can only even activate this ability if you have 0 cards in hand or 7 cards in hand, which there are times that you can be empty-handed. You can maybe activate this at the beginning of the upkeep and see if it's an instant sorcery in hand, which could give you some stuff. So late game, this has some good stuff to it. And then if you have 7 cards in hand, I think that's actually the harder one to actually make consistently happen. Yeah, there are some decks that definitely play with that. Like in Commander, you can end up having windfall effects where people are going to give you back 7 cards in hand. If you have some mana up, sweet, boom, bam, let's get 8 cards in hand now or whatever. And so there is card advantage in this. I think it is a good card. I think that the deck that actually uses this in Constructed, as far as Historic and Standard are concerned, what deck does this go into? I think it's Burn. And I'm not sure how many versions cards of this you could actually play in Burn before you stop being consistent with your mana base. But the deck that is looking to have instants and sorceries first off go to hand, and is also most likely to be 0 or 7 cards in hand. I think that Burn can get to 0 cards pretty often or every once in a while. And so I think this becomes like a one of maybe. You don't want many colorless lands at the same time, especially because now there's, the Lightning Helix that we're getting in the Historic. There's a bunch of other cards where you're wanting multiple colors. And so I'm not sure if this even goes into that deck because it makes it inconsistent, but if any deck would want it, I think that Burn would probably work really well with this. And so, because what's the thing that Burn wants to be able to get 2 lightning, like lightning bolts on a turn instead of only 1. And so I think it's interesting to at least consider. I think it's a not a terrible card, but I'm not sure if I love it. All right. Poet Squeal, 2 mana, equipment. Whenever it enters the battlefield, learn. Which we are learning that learn is actually not that, like, it can be good. There's a lot of other good learn cards that I'm actually not putting in this time. There's some that are actually pretty interesting. Anyway, equip creature gets +1/+1 and has lifelink and equip for 2. So Shadow Spear is better right now, and Shadow Spear even hasn't seen that much play even still, just because we're learning that Maul of Skyclaves having to pay an equip cost is just too expensive sometimes. Shadow Spear has seen play in the past though, because it is just 1 mana and then 2 to equip. And that actually works. Lifelink in general is just a powerful effect. This is busted and limited, of course. Being able to have this and it replaces itself in hand with the learn effect may just make it a little bit more worthwhile, because you can go tutor up a removal spell, tutor up whatever else you need to, and being able to give lifelink on this might be a pretty decent like tempo play. And so I'm interested in this one. I like the art a lot. That was a big thing with that. Anyway, Bayou Snagger, 2 mana 5/4 as additional cost to cast a spell, either sacrifice a creature or pay 3. And so the reason I'm actually excited about this card is first off, there are creatures that you do want to sacrifice on turn 2, like the Arcane's Vessel, like Scorpion, like a few other different creatures that I'm pretty okay sacrificing. So a 2-mana 5/4 is pretty busted stuff. Tarmogoyf, eventually becomes a 2-mana, pretty big creature. I don't remember how big it gets, and it has higher toughness, which is nice. This can pretty easily, I think, get up to that point, that same kind of level. It's common, I think, because it's a little bit inconsistent, and you can also just pay 5 to be able to get out as a 5/4 in the later game, which is still decent. I think the thing I'm more excited for is trying to find ways to like get this into the graveyard and being able to like call the Death Dweller as well. Like I think that, well, you're already gonna be playing Call the Death Dweller, so you play a bunch of things that can come out for 1 mana. You play Skyclave Shades or anything like that as well, and then you call the Death Dweller and bring back all your 1s and 2 drops and play Loris with this, so you can bring it back over and over again. And so I think this just becomes a really powerful, like, I think there is a Golgari or black green Witherbloom, sorry, my bad, a Witherbloom Loris deck that could be really powerful, and like Witherbloom aggro with this card, I think it becomes very, very viable. All right, spell backpack, 2 mana with Magecraft artifact. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, put a book counter on spell backpack. So I was talking about the other time that we don't have like the other mana rock was not quite Mind Stone. This is a lot closer. So you can tap and remove a book counter from spell backpack to add 1 colorless mana. Still not Mind Stone because it requires you doing stuff, of course. So it's not quite there. But if you are casting lots of instant sorcery spells and you're still wanting to ramp up, and then you can also pay 3 to tap and remove 3 book counters from it and draw a card. And so you have the ability to do this. You also don't have to sacrifice it when you draw a card. So it is a 2 mana rock. I really wish that this entered with at least 1 book counter to begin with. I feel like if it entered with 1 book counter to begin with, it would be a playable, viable card. Without that, I'm not sure. Basically, it's really hard to make this add mana on turn 3. Not very hard. If you cultivate, so you play this out, you play your 3rd mana, you cultivate, and then you have at least 1 colorless mana for the next turn. And then maybe after the cultivate, you can use this on the turn after to then be ramping up into some bigger spells, Ugins on turn 5 or turn 4, or something like that. So I think that actually makes it a little bit more possible, where you can still be using this as a ramp spell. It just doesn't ramp up until after turn 3, but then it's probably ramping up consistently after that point. And so that I'm not sure. I think this can be a good card. I'm just in between on it. All right, Plumb the Forbidden, 2 mana instant. As an additional cost to cast this spell, you may sacrifice 1 or more creatures. When you do, copy this spell. For each creature sacrificed this way, you draw a card and lose 1 life. This one is really interesting. It's instant speed, which I think adds a lot to this. If you have just a bunch of tokens and there's a board wipe that comes, 2 mana, sacrifice all the stuff, draw all the cards. It's really cool. You can sacrifice any amount of creatures, and so board right protection, I think this fits into that slot, which is sometimes worth playing, but it's usually not as good because it ends up just being a dead card in some situations, or some people can play around it, or you're not wanting to hold up mana instead of playing out creatures. Well, I think with this one, when it's card draw as well, just by itself, you can at least draw a card and lose 1 life. The additional cost to cast a spell is a may ability, so additional cost of spell, you may sacrifice 1 or more creatures, and so you copy it for each time the other stuff works with that. We were already talking about Liliana, the new Professor Onyx, having the Magecraft ability to deal 2 points of damage and gain 2 life. For each time a spell is cast or copied. I think this goes a long way to making that a pretty awesome just like combo of just like, oh well, we have a bunch of pests out, or because there's some pretty good Witherbloom ways to make a bunch of pests. You have a bunch of other stuff out there, whatever tokens, and you cast this, sacrifice 1 million things, make 1 million copies, or not even 1 million. Like even if you got like 4 copies of this, that's 2 mana, draw 4 cards, lose 4 life, but that's okay, especially if you have pests that you're sacrificing to gain 4 life anyway, which those I think trigger first before this goes off, because the additional costs I think trigger first. I can't remember how that works. Anyway, busted stuff. This is really good. I'm a really big fan of this card. I think it's really powerful. You can draw so many cards with this, and even if you don't draw so many cards with this, there a lot of people have been playing 2 mana, draw a card and lose 1 life on like a 1/1 body a lot of the times, and yeah, this isn't a 1/1 body if it only ends up being that side of things, but at instant speed, definitely worth it. So even just on its bare bones, nothing else happens, just playing this turn 2 without any creatures is definitely not the worst. When it goes crazy pants. I like it lots. All right, Mortality Spear. More good removal. 4 mana instant. This spell costs 2 less to cast if you gain life this turn, and then just destroy target non-land permanent. So Binding Old Gods ability, it's Binding Old Gods basically equivalent at the 4 mana slot, except you can do it at instant speed. You don't get the grab a land, you don't get to do all these other stuff, but it's still non-land permanent, and it can be 2 mana if you gain life this turn, which you can gain life on multiple different turns. Like there's lots of ways to kind of make that happen. And so I'm not sure where I rank this one just yet. I wanted to throw this out there because I thought it was interesting enough. It seems like it can be really powerful and really good removal spell. There's lots of other good removal spells. And so I think it all comes down to, is there ways that you can be consistently gaining life every single turn? There's a lot of cards that are actually wanting that effect. I'm not going to go through all of them in this set right now, but there's a lot of Whitherbloom cards that are looking for that effect of like, if you gain life this turn, or however much life you gain this turn. And so there seems to be ways that you can be gaining 2 to 4 life every single turn with a little bit of effort. And having, if you spend 2 mana to go gain life, and then you get a 2 mana destruction spell after that, destroy anything, seems actually pretty legit. So I'm a big fan of this. I think it's good. All right, and then we have Flunk. 2 mana instant, target creature gets -X until end of turn, where X is 7 minus the number of cards in its controller's hand. I thought this was kind of funny. So if you're already wanting to play stuff for discard, Duress, Inquisition of Kozilok, Thoughtseize, any other things that are out there on turn 1, and then as long as you get their hand -7 cards, this can actually end up being really good removal. The more and more cards that they're spending, the better this removal gets, or the fewer cards they have in hand. This is, I think it feels like just kind of hoses mono red a little bit, which is pretty nice, especially because with Annex, getting the -X is nice because, as long as you get its power below 4 with this, as well as killing it, it doesn't get the tokens out of it. Or like a Bunkers Giant getting down and they do have an Annex out on the battlefield, it doesn't get as many tokens out of it. And so I think this is a really good removal spell for Mono Red, which is a really relevant deck still out there. I don't expect that to change with the new set because Mono Red is always a really good and relevant deck. Like, just no matter whatever format you're in, Mono Red is always there. That's why it's called Red Deck Wins. It's just there's sometimes when it's really there, sometimes when it's like, oh, it's there. And lately it's kind of been like, but it's always there. So anyway, I think this removes a lot of good stuff. It kills Elder Gargoths as long as the opponent has an almost empty hand. It kills a lot of really relevant things. And I think it's very often that people are at least 3 or 4 cards in hand. Like people that if they're playing well and they're doing their stuff that they need to, you're not discarding them. You'll typically see people around 3 to 4 cards. There's sometimes that people will keep a really big hand, but that still gives you -3, -4 to any creature, which kills almost everything in the format anyway. And so I actually think this is a really good removal spell. I think it's good. And I think that brings us to the end here. There's still lots of other stuff out there. There's so many good cards out there, guys, and I did miss a few of them just based off the time that I came in to do this one because like I said, I just was feeling awful today. I ended up having to just be in like bedridden for like 3 hours today, and so feeling a bit better now. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, leave a like, subscribe, all that stuff. I hope you guys are excited for Strixhaven because it's looking so fun. I'm really excited for the cards here in this one. Whitherbloom looks really good. I really like the Golgari colors in general. Those tend to be really powerful and fun. Is it better than Simic? I don't know. Maybe one of these times it will be. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed it. Like, subscribe, support the channel. Appreciate it. See you guys in the next one. Bye.